Hi everyone, this is Mary, you're on Mary Reads, and in this video I decided to talk about the books that you should absolutely read. I chose 10 that were very influential and important for me. Of course, this is a very subjective video, and for everybody the books are going to be different, but I decided to share some of my favorite books, the ones that I still think about and the ones I'm definitely going to be rereading. So let's start. And the first book is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I already mentioned it a couple of times on this channel, and I loved the book. This is a story about four friends who are trying to build their careers and become successful and just live their life in New York City, which is pretty hard, pretty challenging. And we see these four men starting from college and through their adulthood. The book is very, very sad. Unfortunately, one of the friends has a backstory that he doesn't want to share with any of his friends, and slowly through the book we start finding out what actually happened to him. The book at the same time is also amazing. It's about love, it's about friendship most of all. It's about people who you can rely on. It's about, again, gaining success in New York City. And I think this book is just this huge, huge novel about everything. And you can see so many different things. You can find so many different things that are going to be important, particularly for you. So for me, this book was just eye-opening. I cried when I was reading it. I gave it to other people to read. I reread it. I gave the book to my husband. And I love all about it. And I think that if you're looking for something new to read, something moving, something that's gonna make you feel, that's definitely a book to try. I have to say though that some people hate the book, some people love the book, and just see which side are you on and decide if you like it or not for yourself just by grabbing it and reading it whenever you have a free time. The second book on my list is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and when I just got this book, I didn't really know why I would like it. I've heard about it before, I kind of knew the story, and I was just sitting there like, does it actually make sense to read the book? But the second I opened it, the second I opened the first page, I realized that it's love at first sight. I just couldn't stop reading the book. I enjoyed every minute of reading it, and I know that I will absolutely be reading it again. So this is the story of a student, Frankenstein, who decided to create a person, create a human being. And he started taking parts of people, putting them together to kind of sew a new person, and he ended up creating a monster. But then we start thinking as a reader, who is actually the monster? Is the monster Frankenstein, or is the monster this creature that appeared, this beast that came out of his hands? And this book is just, it makes me think about people's cruelty, makes me think about how we sometimes are cruel to others without realizing it. And when we think that the world is so unfair to us and so cruel to us, we should look first if we were cruel to it in the beginning, in the first place. So I absolutely think that if you haven't tried the book yet, you should absolutely do it as soon as you can. The next book I unfortunately don't have copy of. Both times I was reading it, I was doing it on my e-reader, and it's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This book was, the first time I read it, I was 12 or 13, and I loved it. The second time I reread it, I realized I still love it. This is the love story of Elizabeth Bennet and Fitzwilliam Darcy, who start their relationship from hating each other and not thinking much of one another. Elizabeth thought that Darcy is too proud, too mean towards other people. There is nothing alive in him. And Darcy thought that Elizabeth is just not very pretty, too full of herself, too much into herself, and too proud also to notice anybody actually. And this book was just, it's a very, very interesting, light read. It's funny. It's a love story. You have a lot of interesting plot lines. And this book, if one thing I have to say, if you like Bridget Jones' Diary, if you like the movie or you like the novel, try Pride and Prejudice, because this is where the Bridget Jones' Diary came from. The next book on my list, or series of books, is Sherlock Holmes series by Arthur Conan Doyle. And I love the book and every story from the series so much, because all of them are extremely adventurous. You get interesting cases where you end up diving into the backstory of the criminal. And it's just so interesting to read, so interesting to follow Sherlock Holmes, who is brilliant, who is a genius, but who is completely unaware of people's emotions and feelings. And you get this other person, Dr. Watson, who at the same time kind of balances Sherlock Holmes, and you see the case from two different perspectives. You see these two friends talking about it, trying to figure out what actually happened. And I think Sherlock Holmes is so important in the history of like culture and art in general, just because so many movies and so many other books came out of Sherlock Holmes. So Sherlock Holmes was an inspiration for a lot of TV shows, like Psych, for example. At least some of it was this detective and a friend. That's the first thought that I had when I started watching the series. House, the TV show about the doctors, and this brilliant doctor who also is unaware of people's emotions, also is based on, not based, but influenced by Sherlock Holmes. And if you are interested in such TV shows, or if you're interested in just in general classic detectives, this is what you should read. This is just going to be this basic first layer if you're entering the world of mystery novels and detectives, and it's going to give you an understanding of a lot of different plot lines that you see in movies and other novels. The next book on my list is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and this book tells us a story about a young student from St. Petersburg who thought and decided that people are divided into two categories, ones who are ordinary people and the others who are extraordinary. And to prove that he's extraordinary, he kills an old woman, proving that he's not scared by going against the morals. And throughout the book, we see slowly how after the murder he goes mad. We kind of get into his head and go through his thoughts. This book is not just a novel, it's a very philosophical novel, and a lot of philosophers are talking about Dostoevsky as one of them. And I really enjoyed the book, and at the same time, it brought me into a very deep depression. I would love to reread this book, because the last time I read it, I was 17, and it definitely wasn't the age to read this book. So I'm hoping that once I try rereading it, it will be a completely different work for me. The next novel is Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck, and it tells a story about two men, George and Lenny, who are looking for work during the times of Great Depression, and they end up working in a farm. And they both have a dream that one day they will be able to save enough money to buy their own land and start their own farm. And in the book, we will see their process of work, their communication with the other worker that already were on this farm. We will find out if they are actually gonna buy the land at some point. And of course, the main topic of the book is Great Depression, and it's great to see how Steinbeck is able to show these hardships, show the problems people faced during Great Depression. And the book is very much like Walking on Glass. It's a very sad book, but you kind of understand that this is probably what so many people went through during the time of Great Depression, and it just makes you appreciate the book even more. The next book is Master and Margarita by Nabokov, and this is the Russian classics that I haven't heard a lot about, but I think it's a very important work of Russian literature. This is a story of Devil and his entourage coming to Moscow, and you see a lot of questions about what is good and what is evil discussed in the book, in the atmosphere of Soviet Union. This book is more than just a novel. I've read the book twice, and I'm pretty sure I understood less than half, because there are so many references, historical references, philosophical references, and religious references. And it is so interesting to reread the book and open something new. I think I will be absolutely reading this book for the third time, but I'm thinking before I start, I will probably watch a bunch of lectures to kind of understand fully the main idea and start noticing these little details that I didn't notice before. I have to say that this is not going to be an easy read. This is not like a vacation read on the beach. This is the book that you have to read with a pencil and a couple of stickers to make a note. But this is an amazing artwork. This is an amazing masterpiece of literature. And I absolutely think that you should at least try reading it once, at least to kind of get the idea of the plot. The more you read it, the more you find in the book, but at least once is absolutely necessary. The next book on my list is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is the story about two kids, Scout and Jem Finch. We go through their childhoods, we see their experiences, and we see them growing up as their father, Atticus, is trying to defend a black man who was accused of committing a crime that he didn't actually commit. And we will see this, how unfair the system was in the 20th century to black people in particular. And the main idea of the author is to show that people should live peacefully and in harmony and be kind to each other, no matter race, age, gender, whatever you can think of. And I really loved the story. I was reading it when I was younger, so for me it was just this cute story about kids. But as I grew older, I started understanding that there is much more to it than just a kid's story, and this is definitely something that you should try reading if you haven't read it. The next book on my list is 1984 by George Orwell, and I absolutely couldn't not put this book on the list because this is such an important work of the history of literature. And I know that this is not the first dystopian novel. I read the ones that came before it, but I think that 1984 is the one of the most important novels. It's the novel that people used to read, that they read now, and that they will keep reading. And this is the story about Winston Smith, a citizen of Oceania, a country that is ruled by a totalitarian government that does not let people think, that does not let people read openly, express their ideas openly. It is the country where government fully watched after people at any moment in time. And at some point, Winston Smith understands that he's tired of such life, and he decides to rebel against the party and against its leader, Big Brother. And we will see what comes out of it. I think this book is very important to read at any time. This is a timeless book because you will be able to see what your life can turn into if you let it go that way. And unfortunately, it feels like it's easier to happen now with all the cameras, with all the social media, with all the microphones everywhere. And this is just a book that kind of gives you a different perspective on all this technology and how at some point they can be used against you. And the last book on my list is Lord of the Flies, and this is the book about a group of kids that after a plane crash ends up in an uninhabited island, and they decide that they should govern themselves. Without adults, they're trying to do it, but they fail and soon turn savage. And this is the book about how they're trying to stay people, stay human, but they can't. And this is a very tough book to read, extremely tough book to read. And I would love to read it again because I read it a while ago. I was completely disgusted by the book just because of how violent it was. But I think it's still beautiful and you should absolutely try reading it. And it was all for today. Thank you for staying with me and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video and leave a comment, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.